Welcome to a new Kirblog, where we're gonna talk about a game. I got into it way late, cause I am a person who is lame. So I'm joined by Ash Paulson, who grew up with it. And we'll talk about how cool it is. Holy shit. Took me about 60 whole seconds to come up with that one, so I hope you're very proud of me.
That was awesome. I really thought you were going to say Ash Paulson from Game Explain because it rhymed with lame. So I was just like,
oh, god damn it.
I figured that's the direction you were going.
God almighty. Oh, well, if I had any real sense of foresight, I would have done the hi, welcome, everybody.
It's so good.
Jesus. Hi, Ash. Thank you for joining me. I know you've been busy as shit, as we were just talking about off recording before with... hey, Mario for iPhone.
Yeah.
Game Explain, get on that.
Yeah,
Great.
well, as I was saying, like, Andre and Derek are on vacation, so I'm just, like, lazily watching the iPhone 7 reveal. Like, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to get one. And suddenly, here's Shigeru Miyamoto from Nintendo to talk about Super Mario Run. So I'm, like, trying to slap my contacts in and, you know, get a hold of someone to do a discussion with me about this so Derek can edit it together really quick. It was a mess, but thankfully it got done. And thanks for being so patient. I'm glad to join you, even though yesterday didn't quite work out like we thought it would.
That's okay. Well, we're time traveling again, which is appropriate because of the game we're talking about. This is going to be going up on Saturday. So I've been holding on to this one since, oh my god, I'm looking at the date. This is from September of last year. So this is almost a whole year ago I got this question. My god. Okay, so
wow.
Kefka44, thank you for being so patient. My god. The question was, so you mentioned Chrono Trigger, I guess in some Kirblog I mentioned. Would you be so kind to maybe give your 2 cents on a future Kirblog? Well, here I am. So thanks for your patience. I wanted to have Ash on this one for a while because Ash is the biggest Chrono Trigger fan that I know of. Not that there aren't many people who are big fans of this game, but also I wanted to specifically get somebody who grew up with it as it came out years ago, because I pathetically did not grow up with it. I did not play Chrono Trigger until the DS remake, which I played, God, I think like maybe, I don't even remember how many years ago it was now when it came out.
I think it was 2009, I want to say.
Was it? Oh my god. Yeah, so it was before Tome even. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I want to start off on that note with you. So I'm assuming did you play the original on like Super Nintendo or the PS1 remake?
Yes,
or?
I very vividly remember the night I got it. It was around my birthday. I think I was 13 or 12, and it was a game I was really looking forward to, and I made sure to let my parents know. And you know, I got it for my birthday, I think, and I very vividly remember my first time playing it that night. It's one of those gaming memories that has just stuck with me for my life, honestly.
So when I got it for Christmas one year, it might have even been 2009, like when the year it came out, because while I never played the game, I would always remember the character designs. You know, obvious reasons, of course. I was a massive Dragon Ball fan, and
sure.
I still to this day, love Toriyama's art style. And weirdly, Chrono's design. And I know this might have even been why I mentioned it in the first place, like why I mentioned Chrono Trigger on another Kirblog a while ago. Chrono is very much the basis of Alpha from Tome's design. That and obviously the fact that Mike Lucas looks like an anime character. But I would remember always seeing Chrono's design. Oh no, I remember now. I also based this other character from the Nintendo Quest fan wank thing I came up with as a kid off of him as well, because I don't know, something about like the red and blue like striking colors with him, and like the cool hair, and like that very DBZ swordsman-esque kind of thing. Because Dragon Quest, I didn't see much of it all. I think I might have seen like color spreads or something of it in like Nintendo Power, maybe at different points. But Chrono Trigger, I'd see the character designs all over the place in gaming magazines, like on a really frequent basis, and they were always really striking to me, probably because of just my attachment to Dragon Ball. But I didn't play it until the DS version came out, and I've actually only ever played through it the one time, and I probably got if not the worst, probably one of the lamer of the like 500 different endings that you can get in this game.
Right.
Have you played it like multiple times over the years and like gotten every ending you can possibly find?
It used to be that I would replay Chrono Trigger at least once a year. Now, of course, I don't have the time to do that anymore. But No, I maxed out the gallery in both or I should say in the DS version. The PS1 version, I think I finished once just to see all the anime cutscenes, but honestly, the PS1 version is so awful outside of that it wasn't worth playing again just because the loading times were so terrible and the music sounded like it was coming out the wrong end of a toilet. And with a soundtrack like that, you don't want to mess up how it sounds in the final game. So the PS1 version, honestly, unless it is your only way of playing the game, it really isn't worth playing at all. But then when I got the DS version, it packed in all the stuff that the PS1 version introduced, plus its own new stuff. So I maxed out the gallery, the monster list, the ending list, everything. I completely 100% of the DS version, and on top of having beaten the Super NES version, God knows how many times over the years.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like I knew a fair amount of people that had the PS1, maybe because at that time that was the system that so many people were getting invested into and everything, and if they missed out on actually, because it's weird, a lot of people actually you're a couple years older than me, but I grew up with an NES and a Super Nintendo, but most of the kids that were my age in elementary school, their first system was either a PS1 or an N64.
Right.
So they didn't even have the previous 2 generations worth of consoles at all.
So those are the people for whom Final Fantasy VII it would be considered retro.
I guess so. Yeah, maybe that's the case.
Well, I sometimes talk to some people younger than me, and they'll talk about what they consider retro games, and they'll cite games like Final Fantasy VII and Super Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie, and I'm like, retro? Those are all amazing games, don't get me wrong, but retro? When I think retro, I think NES. But to be fair, people older than me would laugh at me and saying, "Oh, you think Super Mario Brothers is retro? Try Pitfall." It just depends on when you grew up. Or Pong, yeah.
I think that there's a fair assessment when it comes to when retro and video games are brought together, because you look at indie games now, and most indie games, if they're going for a retro style, they're usually going for pixelated, either 8-bit or 16-bit style kind of graphics, and very rarely do you ever see low poly N64 or PS1 era stuff, which I also adore for the kind of funky charm of that era and everything too, don't get me wrong. But yeah, see, the kind of interesting thing is too, Chrono Trigger, with as many different remakes as there have been, and especially the DS and the GBA had so many ports and reimaginings and collections and things of all these different classic games, and there were a lot of them that would have, the Mario Advance series. Granted, a lot of those were just reused graphics from what's it called, Mario All-Stars. Yeah, but then a lot of the Final Fantasy remakes were in full. Vector artwork, or some of them even in 3D, the Final Fantasy IV port and everything with voiceover in it and shit.
Right.
Chrono Trigger didn't get any of that. It was left pretty much well enough alone, and I feel that in and of itself kind of says a lot about just maybe how much Square kind of still heralds it as how classic of a fucking game it is, and how it's just maybe it's the sacred thing not to touch, which also might have been the reason why the fan game that might have been shut down.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell how Square feels about Chrono Trigger, because they have no problem parading it out and trumpeting it as one of their classics when it suits them, but then otherwise they just seem to kind of keep it hidden away, and they just bring it out when it suits them. And I don't know, it's just weird, because I remember distinctly back when Chrono Trigger DS was coming out, that one of the people at Square Enix was saying, well, if you want to see another Chrono game, buy Chrono Trigger DS, because we're using sales from this to determine what we're going to do next with the series. And then nothing ever came of that. And as I recall, I believe Chrono Trigger DS sold reasonably well, if not quite well, and nothing ever came from that. So, we all know that there was that trademark that Square famously let kind of die, which was for Chrono Break, which, it seemed for a while we were going to get a third Chrono game, and I still remember the day that I read the news that the trademark had expired, and Square chose not to renew it. So, for whatever reason, Square seems to have decided that it's, not worth their trouble to continue the series at this point. It may also be because they figure it's impossible for them to get the Dream Team back together at this point, and they know that fans, unless they can get that Dream Team back together, fans might not respond favorably. So, although, I thought Chrono Cross is great. So, I don't know what their thinking is about Chrono right now.
See, okay, now here's a question, if I'm remembering correctly. I've never played this game, but Blue Dragon, Was that the dream team of Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy that specifically collaborated on that game? Was
I think
correct?
it partially was, but I know the composer for Blue Dragon was Nobuo Uematsu, who, you know, he's wonderful and he's the Final Fantasy maestro, but he's not really responsible for what many people remember about the Chrono Trigger soundtrack, which was chiefly composed by Yasunori Mitsuda. So I don't think Mitsuda was involved in Blue Dragon at all, if I remember correctly. It has been a while. So I don't think it was a full Dream Team, but I do remember hearing some rumblings about the Dream Team to a degree being involved in Blue Dragon.
Because I think obviously Toriyama did the designs for that one very, very point blankly, and I think maybe it was the scenario writer.
I think that sounds about right.
Yeah, but I think it was for. I think he was the guy from the Final Fantasy series and not Chrono Trigger specifically. But I don't know. Like, I wonder about. I mean, I'm sure a lot of those guys are scattered, and some of them work for different companies and things. Toriyama obviously still, will dish out his tropey, lovable but very tropey character designs.
Yeah.
For Dragon Quest every few years or so. Has Uematsu still been doing composing for a while? Or rather, I should say, has Mitsuda been doing stuff for a while too, or has he been kind of on the down low?
Mitsuda he's a freelancer now. He actually has his own studio, and he often collaborates with other video game musicians, and he still does, games from the ground up, but I think he mostly does kind of his own thing now. But he has done some games. I can't remember exactly. I know he recently did, I believe it was Radiant that was Yoko Shimomura. So yeah, I don't know exactly what he's done lately. I know I think he did some like King's Quest game or some PC game, I think. So he still does some stuff, and he recently did, I think, like a Xenogears and a Chrono Trigger orchestrated album. Like, so he still kind of dips back into his catalog every once in a while, but he has kind of fallen off the radar a bit lately. Like, he's not the tour de force that he was back in the 16-bit and 32-bit days, for sure.
Right. Well, because it's interesting. First of all, I know very, very little about Chrono Cross. Was that the same team, or was that a totally different group of people that did that one?
It was not. It was some of the same team. It was not all the same team. So, and you can tell. I mean, Chrono Cross definitely feels different than Trigger, but it was still the same overall scenario writer, Masato Kato, I believe. And he was involved with Chrono Cross, and it feels similar, but you can tell that it also feels very different. So Chrono Cross kind of definitely has its own flavor.
Well, because what's kind of fascinating about this is, you think about when you have not even just revivals of old franchises and stuff like this, but when you just have sequels in general to a really, really good game, and it's hard to follow up with that sort of thing. I think that when people think of, when they do still think of the concept of a new Chrono Trigger or a new Chrono game of some kind, they might think of it would be great to see those characters back again. And also now that I think that a lot more people in the mainstream, to a better extent than back in the day, know how game development works and what goes into it. I think that a lot of people, you were kind of pointing this out about whether or not they'd be able to get the team back and if that would work okay, etc. I think that would matter to a lot of people, and that's the thing is our friend Rob Porter, Roboto, fellow Udon artist, he is often fond of making this joke about how Square Enix is totally keeping these 3 magic sacred bottles for just such an occasion, one of which is a Final Fantasy VII remake, which they finally cracked open recently, a Chrono Trigger sequel and or remake, and I forget what the third one was. It's something totally obvious, and I can't remember what it is.
Maybe a Final Fantasy VI remake?
No, I think it was something totally different.
Oh, okay.
I wish I could remember what it was. Not that I'm sure people wouldn't love that too, of course. But yeah, it's just funny to me because with 7, 7 is the I want to say the bread and butter, because Final Fantasy in general is for Square, but 7 is with the amount of lasting staying power that it has. Still,
Cloud can do no wrong, basically.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah.
He'll beat himself up about it and be really sad, but he can do no wrong. It's okay. He's a precious cinnamon bun. I don't know. I really do wonder if maybe Chrono Trigger is, at the end of the day, this kind of what? It doesn't need a sequel. It doesn't need a whatever. Let's just leave it as it is. It's perfect the way it is. Sometimes, because even I often, and this is my favorite game of all time, I even sometimes feel that way about Super Mario RPG, to be honest.
I never really felt like Mario RPG needed a sequel. Like, I don't know. I feel like the story is wrapped up in Super Mario RPG in a way very neatly that Chrono Trigger is not. I mean, Chrono Trigger doesn't strictly need a sequel, but especially with the introduction of Chrono Cross and everything, that game adds to the overall mythology and adds to the overall story. I mean, Chrono Cross is begging for a sequel, and in the way that Chrono Cross makes you see that certain things from Trigger were also left unresolved, like, the whole series is just begging for a sequel. But I agree with you. It does seem to be that kind of thing that Square's like, this is kind of the kind of game that might better be, it might be better for us to leave it in the past, as it were, and kind of make that one of our Criterion collection of our games, and not really try to mess with it all that much. But as I said, they are perfectly happy to parade it out when necessary. Like, I was just at PAX, and I was at the World of Final Fantasy Directors Panel just to kind of learn a bit more about the game, because I'm really hyped for that too. And some of the people who are working in World of Final Fantasy, they were introduced to the panel as having been like the producer or a like cutscene director of Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross, and like the logos were up there right on the PowerPoint. Like, they are perfectly happy to trot it out when they need to. So it's not like it's this thing that they kind of sweep under the rug and act like they never did. It's just they're very honest about the fact that they seem to have no interest in doing something else with it.
Yeah, and I think, like, even from just a creative perspective, I can respect that too. Because I think if they were, well, first of all, most businesses, I think we can agree, wouldn't want to be like sweeping most stuff like that under the rug, especially people like it, because they're just like, no, please, still buy it, still buy a copy of it.
Right.
But yeah, and we were talking before, like, so like the characters, and when I think people would be wanting to see like something new with it, I think a lot of people want to see those characters again. With me, Mario RPG was definitely this kind of equivalent thing where, because I grew up with that, like, I have this massive attachment, obviously, to, Mallow and Gino and, the Smithy Gang and a lot of those exclusive characters. And I love the Chrono Trigger cast. Like, that group of, like, 7 characters, like the 7 playables, are wonderful, well-rounded, really interesting characters that all had, like, a pretty good amount of time split up between them and developing them and everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I grew up as, like, a little kid, especially, like much more impressionable, and especially back when, like, this was before games were, like, when I say cinematic, I mean in the modern sense of, like, full animated cutscenes and 3D graphics and voiceover, etc. Like, with also them being very up to your interpretation, too, I imagine they must have been really incredibly impactful to everybody who grew up with it when, they were, like, 10 or younger or a little older or whatever. So what kind of, like, impact did like, particularly, like, the lead characters kind of have on you when you were playing this as a kid?
Well, I know as a kid, I was like, of course, I wanted to be Chrono. He was a cool teenager who was my age, but he had, like, awesome red spiky hair, and, like, he wielded katanas, and, like, he was, why wouldn't you want to be him as an impressionable young teenager? Because especially one who, with his few friends and as often bullied as I was, and, like, of course, it was escapism for me. So, I couldn't help but relate to Chrono in that way. Of course, one of my very few criticisms of Chrono Trigger is that they took the silent protagonist route with Chrono, which I always prefer if a character has a pre-established character or personality, so history, such as it were. So I never quite liked that Chrono never seemed to, have his own real motivation for doing what he was doing. He was just kind of an extension of the player. And I know that's supposed to make characters easier, for the player to then imagine they're filling their shoes, but that never quite was the deal with me. But either way, I still wanted to be this, cool sword-wielding teenager who seemed to have it all. And actually, more than anything, I don't know when or why it really happened, but Luca actually ended up being my favorite character from Chrono Trigger, and still is. Like, I often cite Luca as, like, my second favorite character ever from anything. The first, of course, being Mega Man X.
Wow.
And yeah, no, I love X. We could do a whole Kirblog just talking about the virtues of X as a character.
I plan on that at some point. But I wanted to do this one also because while I'm even forgetting, because you've been streaming through the game on Game Explained recently.
Yeah, which has been really cool because I've never, as many times as I've played Chrono Trigger, I've never experienced it with other people. I've never played it in that kind of context before. So it's been a lot of fun kind of experiencing it with a few hundred different people every weekend. And just kind of having, seeing their reactions. It's kind of a mix of people who have played the game before and people who are just kind of curious, who haven't seen it but kind of want to live vicariously through me. And so it's really been interesting seeing people's reactions to various twists and other things like that.
A lot of curiosity too. I don't know how long you go for each weekend, but like, have you been sharing like memories of like, oh yeah, I remember like the first time I went through this when I was like 13 or whatever, and like this really scared me or something? Like, has that been kind of cool, like sharing those experiences with the whole thing? Yeah.
That actually just happened. Last weekend. Or sorry, not last weekend because I was at PAX, but 2 weeks ago I did part 4 of my stream, and I got to the one of the most epic moments in the game, which is the battle with Magus. And I just started even like the whole Magus's castle part. I was talking about various little cool secrets and things, but when you get to Magus's room and everything leading up to the actual fight, I just started gushing like a fanboy. I was like, you guys, you don't even know, like, if you weren't there at the time, like, you don't even know just how genuinely this is one of the greatest moments in 16-bit gaming, and really all of gaming in my opinion. But like, Magus is such a cool character, and the whole fight with him, the song is an absolute fucking masterwork. Like, that song is, and Mitsuda, to be fair, isn't really known for his amazing battle themes. Like, he has a few good ones, but typically battle themes tend to be his weakest point, and that was not at all the case with the Magus battle theme. So I really gushed like a fanboy about the whole Magus element, and people seem to really respond to that. They seem to really enjoy hearing my kind of off-the-cuff, raw reactions to memories from my childhood or growing up with this game. So that was a lot of fun.
For sure, yeah. It's funny also, it reminded me the bit about Magus. So when I was a kid, I and my parents, who knew I was obsessed with this character because I dressed up as him for Halloween, I pronounced Gino as Geno for like so long until I realized like, oh, it's Gino because he's like Pinocchio and it's like an Italian name. Oh, I'm an idiot. And then I've for all the time I've known who Magus is, I've been saying Magus. And then I recently found out that apparently because in Japanese, I guess his name, which is the title, is Mao, which is literally just Demon King, and then Magus, which is like their way of translating that, because obviously he has a real name that we won't spoil, like a real name. And I was like, oh, it's Magus. I'm like, God damn it, why can't I fucking pronounce any of these characters?
No, it's honestly, I've heard everything from Magus to Magus to Magus, and it's just one of those things. It makes more sense that it would be Magus because he is a badass mage, and that does make more sense. And Square is kind of the king of weird, hard to pronounce names. I know I had an old friend of mine used to pronounce the Eidolon Bahamut as Behamut, and I always used to make fun of her, and I'm just like, Behamut, how could you? No, come on. But hey, I could see, I could see why someone could possibly think that. There's so many weird names in Square Enix games for people to pronounce incorrectly. So I have no doubt that it actually is Magus if that's the case. But I guess I'm just so used to saying Magus.
Well, yeah. How many years has this game been around for? It was 95, I think.
95,
right?
Yeah, and it came out at the end of 94 in Japan. So it recently, it recently celebrated its 20th anniversary.
Well, what's crazy about that too is if you kind of stop and think about this, it was also kind of hitting right around the time that Dragon Ball, and then basically right after that, Dragon Ball Z were kind of making a splash. I think actually, if I'm remembering right, I think that around that point was when they were running in syndication, like even before Cartoon Network and Toonami kind of snatched up DBZ exclusively. It was on like 6 o'clock in the morning on like WB, where I was growing up, and like different places around the country. So to kind of see like Toriyama's work sort of making a big splash both on TV and in video games in the US around that same time, it's kind of interesting, like looking back on it, and like how much like his design work alone has kind of had a major influence on all these different both consumers and even creatives in a way, like because DBZ has influenced so many people in terms of like animation and storytelling, and Chrono Trigger, I would totally argue a lot of game developers who are working today 20 years ago were probably very, very majorly influenced by that game, and I could see this also being a game that would get people into wanting to make video games too. It probably did, for all I know.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that for a second. And we see, we at least in one game, we can see how Chrono Trigger's influence has borne out in a DS game called Radiant Historia, which, for all intents and purposes, might as well be the modern Chrono Trigger. Like it obviously has nothing to do with Chrono Trigger, but it's essentially a 16-bit JRPG that is a lot deeper than you initially think it is. It's about time travel. So and it's it's for the DS, so it looks like a Super NES game in terms of its 2D sprite work. So yeah, I mean, we can see at least one game in which CT's influence is really borne out directly into a game that was almost directly inspired by it. So yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that Chrono Trigger has had a monumental influence on future developers, especially RPG developers.
Oh yeah. You were talking about. I didn't even get on this note earlier about the favorite characters and moments and things. I think that overall, my favorite at the end ended up being Frog.
Oh, Frog he's so good. I mean, Frog is just awesome. Like, yeah, and actually, Frog had my one gripe with the DS version. I consider the DS version to be the definitive version of Chrono Trigger for most intents and purposes, but my one gripe with the DS version has to do with Frog and the fact that they removed his old English dialect, and I'm like, why? That's so iconic. I mean, he comes part and parcel with that amazing dialogue, and they removed that.
If anything, actually, because I did hear about that, what I kind of was hoping they would have done is to make the rest of the medieval world consistent by having everybody else in that era speak similarly, because that's what I figured, was the whole point of it. Is
right.
Because obviously, like Ayla and like the cavemen and everything from the prehistoric era, they all have like the caveman ooga booga, snoo snoo kind of speak. Snoo snoo, Jesus Christ. So I figured in the medieval age that everybody would have been talking like that. But in the Super Nintendo version, my understanding was that Frog was the only person who actually spoke in that kind of way. Which that to me is like, okay, that's a cool idea, but then why doesn't everybody else?
No,
so
I know.
What I was kind of hoping was instead they would have done the opposite, where they made everybody else in that particular part of the world speak the same way. And yet I guess maybe it was just easier and less time consuming to just fix Frog's dialogue, which is like, that's kind of a shame. But
well, I think what it was it was retranslated to make it more accurate and in line with the original Japanese script, and for whatever reason, the original Japanese script didn't. It didn't have that kind of middle-aged dialect for every NPC in the Middle Ages. It probably should have. I agree with you, but I think really it's just for the DS version, their intent was to retranslate the game and make it fall in line with the Japanese original as closely as possible.
Oh, okay. So did they actually retranslate the whole game like from the ground up for that?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. So the reason Frog has his old English dialect in the Super NES version is because of Ted Woolsey's work, who he kind of put his own unique spin on Final Fantasy VI and Secret of Evermore and all those games. So, I mean, and that I don't really have a problem with Woolsey's work, because I think in some cases it had a lot of personality, as is the case with Frog. I just know that Woolsey's work was often affected by Nintendo's draconian censorship policies at the time. So it is nice to have, the real deal in the DS version, even if it does mean that Frog's dialect had to be cut. And because we still have the Super Nintendo version, which isn't going to go anywhere. It's going to, it'll be preserved forever. So, you still have both.
It's funny, too, because I believe he also wrote Mario RPG, ironically enough.
Okay. I think so.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed to be, like, one of the go-to guys for that. And that was in a time where, translation and adaptation writing for video games, most of the time, I think, were kind of hand-in-hand. And now, you have, like, especially when you're adapting a JRPG, you have a translator. Sometimes you'll have multiple adaptation writers, etc., and they all kind of work in tandem to each other.
Right.
So just things have very much evolved since that time. So it definitely makes sense that they wanted to evolve this game with that. I don't fault them for that, but I do think that especially because when you have a game like this where it's like there's all these different time periods, and you can really add a lot of like flavor and maybe not even so much liberties, but just like because it's all based in some kind of logic. It's like the prehistoric people talk like caveman, the medieval people talk like the old English kind of thing. Maybe even the futuristic people could have talked in different terms, like the way that like what's his name, like Impulse in Young Justice says like that is so crash or whatever, like future terminology kind of thing. I could have even gone that route if they wanted to. Although in the case of Chrono Trigger, it just would have been like, food is good, digestibles, because we're sad and we have nothing to live off of.
I mean, they're essentially, they're essentially homeless, and they've been, the whole world's been destroyed. So I don't know how much they would care about dialect, I should say.
But yeah, Frog, and also a very close second, Robo, who was adorable, and just I would say Frog to me was like the coolest in terms of like the dramatics and everything, like with his brother and like why he is the way he is and everything was really cool. Robo was just adorable and endearing to me, and he's like the cutest character in his kind of like way of being and everything.
Don't ever play Chrono Cross. Don't play it.
Oh no, am I gonna be sad about something?
Yeah, if you like Robo as much as you do, and I mean I like Robo too, but just don't play Chrono Cross. I'm telling you.
God,
I mean, honestly, really, no matter who you like in Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross comes across as incredibly sad and depressing. But especially if you're a Robo fan or a Luca fan, yeah, it's Chrono Cross is its own thing. I'll just say that I like it, but it definitely added a lot of darkness to the overall narrative.
On the note of Luca, you were mentioning earlier too, something I also kind of like about this, and I feel that by and large most JRPGs have actually been very, very good about this, like most of the time, is it has a pretty well-rounded cast of characters. Like it's got a pretty good even split of like a male to female ratio, which is really nice.
Yeah,
and then,
I think, and yeah.
And then even with like, you know, like monsters and demons and, you know, Frog and the robot characters and like whatever the hell Johnny is. It's whatever.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I really do think Chrono Trigger was kind of ahead of its own time, really, in terms of its male to female representation and its playable cast.
Ahead of its own time.
Oh wow, yeah, I didn't think you sound like Andre. But yeah, you know, I think it really was it was ahead of the game in that sense, just because there were a lot of RPGs back then and even now that really have a very kind of uneven male to female character ratio, and Chrono Trigger got that right to begin with.
Yeah, I like I was saying before, as much as I love these characters now, having only, you know, these few years of experience with them, I can absolutely see why they're still adored, and even like it's funny too, like, you know, we've had Smash and, you know, the big whole thing with people submitting characters and stuff, and like more so that I'm putting this ahead of, you know, my own desires. Like a lot of people were saying, oh, Chris, you should tell people to vote for Gino on the Smash ballot, and I'm like, I'm not gonna pick Gino. We're lucky we got the costume.
I'm actually shocked that we got the costume at all.
Yeah, honest to God. But but like Chrono, that's a character I while I also don't think would have had nearly as good of a shot as, you know, Cloud or like, you know, a bigger Final Fantasy character. He's one that I think is much more justified for people to be like, you know, I want this person, even though
absolutely.
Even though you could argue Gino had more like personality and like depth to him as a character than Chrono in terms of just iconicity. Like, I mean, 100%. And also, he could have had some really cool powers too. I would have liked to see that.
I don't think, yeah, but I mean, I agree. I think Chrono is a much more, is much more of a shoo-in than Gino, just because Chrono, you know, he's the star of one of the most popular, beloved RPGs of all time, video games of all time, really. And Mario RPG is that as well, but Gino isn't the star of that game. Mm-hmm. And even though he's, I would say, probably the fan favorite from that game, I don't feel like Mario RPG had an impact on the level that Chrono Trigger did.
No. And even again, favorite game of all time, even I could admit that. Like, and also because like Mario RPG, while incredibly well made, it is a very, I wouldn't even say dumbed down, because that's not true. It's a simplified Final Fantasy game. Like Chrono Trigger, like for its talking about its gameplay, like there are certainly other games like it, like before and after, but it feels incredibly unique with the fact that it's fixed battles. There's a lot of depth to the battle system itself, with the usage of the type advantages and everything, which I actually, you could even say, kind of perfected a little bit more so before Pokemon came in and you know, had their kind of shot at that too, kind of interestingly. And just like, again, like the level of like variation with like the bosses were all really like different and like branded as unique in every like area you were going to, you know, because like each time period had like, I would say at least like 3 or 4 like really, really distinct different kind of bosses that it never felt like you were just doing the same shit over and over, and that was really interesting to me. Like, yeah, I remember, I think like I might have even just like played all the way through it like during that Christmas vacation when I got it. I feel like I might have been just like so hooked on it that I just went through that whole thing. And it was probably more hours than I should have left into it, or maybe less because I only got the one ending. But either way,
you can never log enough hours into Chrono Trigger, honestly. And what's great about it too is that even though the core story is on the shorter end of RPG, I mean, it's still a good 20 to 25 hours. I would say 30 if you're really taking your time.
Yeah.
The side quests are the side quests are interesting in that they are optional, but they really do flesh out the main cast, and they really do flesh out the main story and add to the overall experience. And if you do every side quest, you're looking at 50 hours easily. Like it really does kind of build out the game and the game world in a way that doesn't feel like you're just tracking down each character's best weapon. You're actually getting to know these characters. And actually my favorite moment, or one of my favorite moments in the game, is part of one of the completely optional side quests, and you'll never see it if you don't do it. So really, you know, Chrono Trigger locks some incredible character building moments behind completely optional scenarios, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, and actually, good segue. So we've talked about the main cast. Let's talk about some of the side characters, because there are so many to love and enjoy. Any particulars from throughout the different eras or with the different factions that really stood out to you that you have some funny or fond memories of?
I never liked Kino. Like, Kino always just drove me up the wall. I guess he's such a loser, and it's really hard to imagine someone super powerful and super proud like Ayla ever wanted to shack up with someone like Kino, just because he's just so whiny. And I mean, hey, we all have bad days. I know he was jealous of Chrono, and he had to step up, and that was part of his character. But he gets better eventually, and he steps up, and he doesn't just keep whining about Chrono. But still, he's just so obnoxious, and especially compared to Ayla, who's just so strong and badass, and he's just like, oh, Chrono's strong, and I want you to like me and not Chrono, and I'm gonna steal your gate key, and I'm gonna make things harder for you. It's like, just do something useful. I feel like he does later on. Huh?
I feel like some of this is even tapered with like, why couldn't I marry Ayla? For God's sake!
Oh, right.
I would have started the human race with her.
No, I always had a crush on Luca. Luca is my favorite of the female Chrono Trigger characters. But no, it's just like, although to be fair, later up he does kind of, he owns up, and he is the one who kind of helps lead his fellow tribesmen to safety when they all get captured in the Tyranno lair. So, he does eventually kind of get better.
In terms of making a nightmare for you, and yet I still enjoyed them so much, Izzy, Slash, and Flea, I adore.
Oh, Ozzy.
Ozzy, Slash, and Flea, pardon me.
Yeah, Ozzy, they're classics.
I definitely have a thing for, they're more threatening than Team Rocket, but the goofball villain, usually a trio or a duo most of the time, those three were certainly entertaining all throughout, and I love doing their thing on the mansion. Was that a side quest, or I forget? Do you actually have to do that? Like, is that required?
Ozzy's fort, that specific part is a side quest. You do fight them in Magus's castle. That's, of course, required, but Ozzy's fort is a side quest.
Okay, I did do Ozzy's fort. I did really like that. Probably just because I liked them so much and I wanted to go fight against them again.
Right. And what's actually cool is that they make a cameo in Chrono Cross. They're one of the only direct cameos in Chrono Cross that you'll see.
I have seen them, and they look very weird compared to how they were drawn previously.
Yeah.
Although it's funny because I could maybe even argue that their three designs are some of the most Toriyama-esque of any of them in the cast, because Ozzy and Slash in particular, Flea is a little more unique, but Ozzy and Slash, they flat out just look like they were Frieza's henchmen wearing wizard clothes instead of armor or whatever.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but
speaking of Flea, she, as I've been replaying Chrono Trigger for the Game Explained stream, I find myself more shocked than ever that Flea appeared in the game like he did at all. Because this was essentially a very early example of a transgender character, and Nintendo didn't really go out of their way to hide that all that much. He even has a line where he goes, beauty is power, and I've got the power, and he gets pissed off that I think Frog calls Flea a she, and he gets really pissed off about that, even though he's clearly feminine in appearance. And I'm like, wow, this is, even back with, censorship happy Nintendo back in the Super Nintendo days, this was something that kind of made it through, and, in a generally unedited state, which I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, for sure. And even I think in the DS version, I don't think that they messed with that too much either necessarily. Which is cool. Yeah. No, I mean, obviously you could also argue but they're a villain and they're stereotypical Zoisek kind of personality or whatever. Whatever. They're still a likable character, so fucking whatever.
They could have easily redesigned the sprite to make Flea look like a man and removed any references to that kind of dialogue, and they didn't. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, for sure. Nintendo's kind of half and half. Like, I like the fact that Vivian exists in the first place, and Birdo they've kind of just like let well enough alone with. So it's like I try not to give him too much shit for that, but it makes sense for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, aside from Kino, who you detest, who did you like in the side in the side character collection?
I mean, this is such an easy answer, but Scala. I mean, I feel so bad for her. I just want to give her a hug. Like I just want to give her a hug and let her know it'll be okay. It might take a long time for it to be okay, long time, but it will be okay eventually. She just
there's a part
nothing
of me
good
that,
happens to her.
There's a part of me that wished that she was even kind of like that she was like playable for a little while too, because I was like, oh, she's cool and she'd be fun to have on, but
It almost feels like she was intended to be playable at one point because there's just, I don't know, it just feels that way. And I believe, I don't know, I can't say for sure, but I believe if you go back and read stories about Chrono Trigger's development, you'll find out that she actually was intended to be playable. I could be wrong about that, but, there is that mysterious extra slot in the character switching screen that never gets filled up, even when your party is completely full. So,
she would make the most
it doesn't
sense,
seem... Yeah, her, or I would say Janus or Janice, however you want to say it. I would say one of those two makes the most sense, but I'd say Scala ends up making the most sense, except for the fact that she ends up being so important to not only Chrono Trigger's ending, but the events of Chrono Cross that might not have worked to have her playable.
Oh yeah.
So. But Scala, I like her.
Her little extra side quest thing in the DS version, which I thought was kind of cool too. That was pretty interesting.
I thought that was. I love that the extra. Yeah, especially if you play Chrono Cross, and I know you haven't. If you know what the final boss of Chrono Cross is, you know why the extra final boss in Chrono Trigger was so cool. And to see Scala like you do inside of the Dream Devourer, like you know why that's so awesomely cool if you've played Chrono Cross.
Okay, I have a weird question, but maybe I'm curious as to what your answer is. So
right.
with games like this, actually in more recent years, when I play games like this, most of the time, this is the perfect kind of game where like I come up with voices and I'll read all the dialogue for like as many characters as I can and come up with stuff. I've done that with a lot of games before.
Sure.
This is a game where I made an exception, and I think it was because I knew who the characters were for so long, and I associated so much with Toriyama that instead this is one where like, no, you know what? I'm gonna have some headcanon voices instead. So for myself, but actually, I want to ask you first. Okay, did you ever have what like in the many times that you played it? Did you ever have any particular, especially because I mean, you grew up around voice talents for fucking ever. Did you have particular voices or particular actors or anything in mind for certain characters that were interesting to you or anything like that?
I know that I used to assign my own voices to characters at some point during my childhood. I don't know when that stopped. I mean, I don't really do it anymore, and I haven't done it in a long time. So I don't know. I guess I want to say at some point I probably have imagined voices for the characters of Chrono Trigger, but if I did, it was a fleeting thing, and I don't have them in my head now necessarily.
Oh, okay.
So if anything, it wasn't really it never really was a lasting thing for me, I guess, for whatever reason.
Oh, okay. Because, like, yeah, I mean, I couldn't help myself with, like, okay, if they kind of look enough like this DBZ character, then I'm hearing that Funimation voice actor in my head. Even down to, like, Chrono not actually speaking, I'd just be hearing Eric Vale doing like future Trunks like sound effects or whatever for the battles and shit.
And I think that may be part of why, because I feel like that almost kind of demystifies them to me to a point. It's like, I don't know, these characters are so important to me, and they have this place in my heart that I feel like making them sound like any voice actor or any character that I already know what they sound like, it kind of just, I don't know, it just kind of, it demystifies them. It just humanizes them a bit, and that's just a little less fun to me. So I guess it's just not something I ever felt the need to do.
Oh, for sure. And I'm not talking to the level like, oh, and then Frog sounds like Vegeta, and so sounds like not one-to-one like that necessarily, but certainly like...
but I mean, I feel like Luca would almost sound exactly like a less ditzy Bulma. Like, I mean, of course Luca's going to sound like that.
Right, yeah. Which I think, I feel like maybe, I think Monica Rial might have even been who I was hearing for her, actually. I mean, because that's...
Really?
Yeah, well, because, I mean, like, purple hair, glasses, anime looking,
exactly.
That's a Monica Rial character.
Yeah.
I have to admit that fun little OVA about the creatures and their little festival and like, the PS1 cutscenes, like, that certainly made me dream about, like, oh, I want, like, a Chrono Trigger, like, I mean, we got the OVA, but like an OVA with the characters would have been really fun to see. But which I'm actually surprised they never capitalized on that. But us getting the little Monster Festival one in and of itself was pretty cool, just to have that, because once in a while I'll go back and I'm reminded of the Gardens are thing where he's like chasing them, the gato or whatever. God, what else? I'm trying to think of any other like I know there's a billion, but like any other like standout like moments, things, tracks, characters, anything like that worth sharing.
My favorite moment, or one of my favorite moments in the game, is the campfire scene, easily, and that's what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about a major character building moment and world building moment that it's locked behind a completely optional side quest. In this case, it's the Fiona's desert side quest. Okay. I also like Fiona as a character as well, because I just like that she really. I like that Fiona. You learn about her, and you in the beginning of the game, and other people talk about her 400 years in the future. Then you actually go and meet her and think, okay, well, here she is, but she's not going to really play a role in the game. And then later on, she plays a massive role in the game, via one of the side quests. So, once you restore the desert and into the forest, and restore the continent to its former glory, you have this campfire scene, and it really is just this really nice little quiet scene where all the characters are, sitting around a campfire. Chrono's knocked out, of course, he's sleeping, but they're all just talking about everything that's happened to them up to this point, and they kind of just they wax poetic and kind of speculate on what could be guiding them to toward their fates. What has set all this stuff into motion? They talk about how it could be like this entity that's beyond any of their understandings, and it could just be the planet itself. But even better than that is, after everyone goes to sleep, Luca wakes up in the middle of the night, and she's like, it's really creepy, and it's like, I remember as a kid, this really scared me, because these really like haunting time gate sounds are happening, but it's like the extended version of it, so the gate sounds get even creepier. And so you go investigate, and you find this red time gate, which to my knowledge you don't find anywhere else in the game. So that already tells you that this is a little darker and a little more sinister than just a regular blue time gate that's always supposed to be there. And so for whatever reason, Luca is given the opportunity to go revisit the exact moment that her mom became crippled. And it was essentially Luca's fault. Not really, but kind of. And so Luca has a chance to make it right, or she has a chance to fail again. And if you fail, it's really, really disturbing. Mm-hmm. But, she has a chance to make it right and essentially change time and give her mom her legs back. And either way, whether you succeed or fail, the exchange she has with Robo when she gets back to the present time is really, really, really just heartfelt and well written, and it's such a great moment for Luca and for the game as a whole, I think. And it really gives you a window into kind of a darker thing at work that's going on, because they never really explained why she was able to go back into that particular moment in time, but it was possible, and you're left to kind of suss out the answer yourself, and kind of you're given this glimpse into another whole set of inner workings at play here that really kind of make Chrono Trigger's story a little darker than you might expect at first, which I really love about it.
You remind me, Square seems to have a really good, if not specifically a campfire, but just those intimate moments where like everybody's kind of the gang is sitting around in their RPG stories. It's like, God, like they have so many good ones of those. Even 15, which I haven't even like really invested a whole lot into. Like when I see that between the four guys, I'm just like, oh,
yeah,
makes me feel all
and
nice.
They did that really well with 10 as well. I mean, the 10 opens with a campfire scene essentially. Mm-hmm. So no, I totally hear you.
I actually, you reminded me, I messed up, and I messed up during that part, and part of me is kind of glad I did, because I feel like I got a maybe even a more powerful experience out of her failing and seeing what came as a result of that, and also that, my God, that screech sound effect.
Oh, the screech is the worst.
The Super Nintendo is somehow able to produce, because that was also going to remind me of its little inclusion in the final battle theme against Lavos.
I
love
that as
part of it, because that is a big one for me, that I adore the final battle with Lavos.
Me too.
Because I think it took me maybe 3 or 4 tries to win, but I weirdly didn't mind or get frustrated, because it was like, I want to fight all the other forms of this fucking cell-looking piece of shit thing at the end or whatever. This is terrifying. So that was really cool.
And the awesome music helps too.
I should have remembered too, especially with the time frame. This makes so much sense to me now. I enjoyed that game so much that I actually, when I was working on, for those of you out there who have seen the Nintendo collabs, pardon me, I had to burp in a sentence. I decided to throw in at the last second a Chrono Trigger segment where it was basically Chrono walking, like it was like a side shot of Chrono walking, and all of the other party members like joining in and just like talking about whatever like dumb bullshit they wanted to talk about. and it just ends with him eventually just losing it and being like, "Shut up!"
Yeah, well, it's funny. Chrono does have actually one line in a single ending that you can get, and it's something about he has one spoken line in the game. And it's one of the optional endings you can get, but it's talking about, or the ending is called the slideshow ending, I think. And Luca and Marley are doing like this slideshow presentation of every like NPC and monster or whatever. And Chrono's like, and they kind of get goofier with it, like with each passing minute, and they start really goofing off. And Chrono walks on screen and says, "I thought you guys said something about a little slideshow or something." And he's standing there looking all pissed off. And that's like the only line he has in the entire game. It's really weird. It's like, why even give him a spoken line there?
That's so fourth wall breaking. I love
so
that.
Cool.
Oh my god.
And they don't call attention to it. They just do it, and then that's it. It's great.
Amazing. And then it's like, wait, so like, could he talk this whole time and he just didn't? Did we just not hear him?
It really makes you think about
it.
And that's the best part, is it makes you think about it, but you're never going to get an official answer.
Oh my god, that reminds me of in Bomberman 64, The Second Attack, which is one of my favorite N64 games. He's silent. Bomberman is silent throughout that entire game, and then and Pommy, the little like Pikachu Kirby freak child, is the one who's doing most of the talking. And then the ending credits montage has a bunch of cutscenes from like throughout the entire game, except if Bomberman were actually talking and it shows what he was saying. And this is after like tons and tons and tons, like years worth of Bomberman games where he never speaks, and it's like, oh, cool. And then after that, he was speaking in every single Bomberman game ever. But
that's so weird. Yeah.
God, yeah. If anything, if I were to be tempted to, and I'm sure I should at some point, to go back and replay the game, I would want to definitely try to aim for like maybe one of the more ambitious endings, because from what one of my friends at the time told me. He said that I got one of like the lamer ones because I didn't do like that many side quests or like meet that, because I know there's like different criteria that you have to meet depending to get the different ones, etc. I know I did like a fair amount of stuff, but not everything.
Well, did you at least do Death Peak? Did you revive Chrono?
I think so. I know I didn't fight like Super Mega Ultra Queen Zala or whatever her name was.
Oh, Zeal. Okay, so you didn't do the Black Omen.
No, I did not do that stuff.
Okay, the Black Omen is kind of your gateway to the true ending. Essentially, if you revive Chrono via Death Peak and you fight through the Black Omen, you essentially are on your way to getting the best ending, or what is considered the standard good ending.
Gotcha. I mean, I guess like most of the actual endings, except for the game over ending, most of them are good in some way. I guess this is more so just like better than others, more or less.
Right.
But I would maybe want to try to shoot for like a higher percentage rate. I mean, I don't know, like I'd wonder.
Well, which ending did you get? Did you get the? I assume from what you're telling me that you probably got the ending where Chrono and Marley ended up. They're on some balloons. They're hanging on to some balloons together.
That's the one that I got. Yeah.
Okay, so essentially you got that because you didn't go through the Black Omen, which means you had to sacrifice the Epoch to destroy Lavos' shell. But if you go through the Black Omen, or certain other ways, you can actually fight the shell. You don't destroy the shell by sacrificing the Epoch. You fight the shell yourself, and then you fight the other two forms that you're used to, and then the characters have access to the Epoch at the end. So the ending totally, or at least somewhat, changes based on the fact that they're not hanging on balloons; they're actually flying in their time machine.
Oh my god!
So that changes things up quite a bit.
You're making me want to. Yeah. What part are you up to in your stream at the moment?
I just beat Magus, or Magus,
okay.
however you want to say it. So I just beat him, and I'm now back in prehistory, where I'm about to go take on the Tyranno lair and fight the Black Tyranno and Azala.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
By the way,
oh, sure, go ahead.
Here's a bit of trivia for you. A lot of, and this is, some people probably already know this, but did you know that Azala actually is a female?
Oh. Wait, like
Yeah.
the little like dino wizard character?
Yeah, the leader of the Reptites is a female.
Well,
We're left to assume that Azala's male, but it's actually, yeah, it's funny too, because if you consider the fact that Azala is a female, her dialogue with Ayla becomes much more catty. Like, it's like they're so catty going back and forth at each other. It's really funny. Yeah.
See, going back to the DBZ voice correlation thing, I was hearing Azala as Bobbity, and I'm like, I should have been hearing them as Frieza this whole time.
Yeah. Wait, is Frieza female?
Well, no, but Frieza used to be
okay.
played by he used to be played by a woman in the previous dubs.
It's like Ranma.
Yeah. Well,
Gotcha.
But at one point,
Because Ranma was originally played by Sarah Strange, right? And then changed to Richard Cox.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's right. Voice acting trivia.
Like one of the few voice acting trivia bits that I know from anime, because I was such a Ranma fan back when I still am, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's probably gonna wrap us up. Any other parting words? I mean, okay. Actually, if anybody out there has not played this game yet, I'm assuming it's still pretty easy to like find a copy of the DS version or whatever, like on Amazon.
Yeah. It's not hard.
How would you like pitch this game to somebody who like maybe would be interested or like has played RPGs before or whatever? Like parting words on that.
What I would say is my favorite thing about Chrono Trigger is that it can be, and this is what I tell a lot of people, it can be exactly what you want it to be, and that's not something you can say about a lot of different RPGs. Like Chrono Trigger, you can take it as this fun, lighthearted romp, time travel romp with a fun cast of characters and leave it at that, and it can be that, and it's cool and it's great in that sense. But if you want, you can read between the lines, especially once you start getting toward antiquity and everything that happens in 12,000 BC. If you want, you can start reading between the lines and really grab a lot more out of it than you would if you were just looking at it as a surface level type thing. And that's what I love about it. It can be as in depth and as dark and as interesting as you want it to be. And if you're in the mood for a lighthearted game that you don't really have to think about too much, you can play Chrono Trigger as that, and it's awesome. But if you want something that you can really get a lot of meat out of and really kind of do a lot of studying and look into the lore and study the lore and really grab some interesting stuff out of it, Chrono Trigger works equally well as that too. And I would argue that it works better as that. And that's what I love about it, is it can be whatever kind of experience you want it to be. And that's what's so wonderful about it. And I don't think there are a lot of games like that in general, let alone back then or now.
I agree 100%. And on the subject of the meat, like there really is like there's so much depth to just absolutely everything in every like orifice of this game. Basically, it's like all of the different eras of time, all of the characters, big or small depending on their role in it overall. The just even from a gameplay perspective, it's incredibly like well designed, like very streamlined, very fun. Even actually on the note of what you can make of it yourself, even the difficulty of it can kind of be what you make it. I mean, like, for fuck's sake, it practically lets you skip to fighting the final boss, like, very early on if you want, and you can go and just do that. And I think, isn't there even, like, an ending of, like, if you just skip everything else and you just kill Lavos, like, right at the beginning, you get, like, a totally different kind of experience that way?
Yeah, well, Chrono Trigger essentially was the pioneer of the New Game Plus idea. I think it was the first game to ever do it. And essentially what you're talking about is the developer's ending, where once you beat the game, you can actually go fight Lavos immediately with just Chrono and Marley, or Chrono alone if you want, by investigating the right star, or sorry, not the right-hand telepod at the Millennial Fair. And there's like a little blue shining ball in the right-hand telepod machine, and if you examine that, you'll warp straight to Lavos, and you can fight Lavos essentially right after you start the game. And if you win, then you get the developer's ending, where you get to basically wander through all these different environments from the game, talking to the developers, which is really cool.
Holy shit.
It's definitely worth doing, or at least looking up a video of, but it's definitely worth doing. It's not too hard to beat Lavos with just Chrono and Marley. I mean, Chrono Trigger wasn't ever the hardest game to begin with, but it's not that hard to do, so it's certainly, tractable. And it really is. Chrono Trigger is one of I think the first game to pioneer the New Game Plus idea, and you can then beat the game at various key points in the story and get a different ending for each one. So I think there's one ending where I guess I can't remember exactly why the reason for it is, but basically everyone in the present era, like Chrono and Marley and everyone, they are now frogs or reptites or something, and I think it has to do because I think if you beat the game and beat Lavos before you go back and help Ayla beat Azala, you're supposed to assume that she couldn't do it without Chrono's help. So then, really, there are no humans. They're all reptites.
Oh my god!
And so you wake up in bed, like Chrono wakes up in bed, and either his mom or Marley wakes him up, but they're all reptites. And it's like, oh, what the hell? It's all messed up. So they kind of have a good time playing with what it might mean if Chrono didn't actually continue on his journey and just went to beat Lavos early.
Oh my god,
It's really cool.
Wow. Oh, I'm learning so many things. See, one last thing I want to add. I think you'll agree with me on this. This game is also, and not very many other old school RPGs. I think, certainly like a few other ones, and particularly ones by Square, absolutely. But there are very few games like this that are timeless. Like the fact that, the PS1 port a few years later, and then the DS port, more recently, and then even, my friend Steve Yurko is even he picked up a copy and he's finally playing through it now himself. You can pick this up and experience it and enjoy it the same as it ever was throughout the 20 years it's been around. Like, it's that good. It holds up that incredibly well.
It does, and then
everything about it.
If you end up being one of those people who wants to extrapolate more from the game and really kind of look at what makes it tick and kind of get into some of the darker elements of the story, then you have Chrono Cross, which takes one of those plot threads and goes whole hog on it and really shows you the really messed up implications of what Chrono and his friends did when they repaired time, because it's messed up. Like, I don't want to spoil it for you if you intend to play it, but it essentially casts what Chrono and his friends did in Chrono Trigger, by saving time, by saving the world. It casts it in a very different light, and it shows you the very dark side of what they did means, and it's really interesting.
Is Cross like rare? Like, is that semi-difficult to get a hold of these days? Or
I think the physical version it's pretty hard to get a hold of, yeah. But you can get it on PlayStation Network or on the PlayStation Store for PS3. Cool. So it's easily playable either on your PS3 or your Vita.
Oh, fuck yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so you get it's a PS1 classic.
Well, I think that's a whole hour's worth of gushing we can do for certain. Not that we couldn't do more, of course, but I do want to say, please give your stuff and your stream a plug, because by the time this will be coming out, I think the next day will be when you'll be picking back up on that, I believe. So. Oh,
awesome! Which actually is my birthday. I'm gonna get to stream Chrono Trigger on my birthday, which is gonna be awesome.
Yay! Awesome.
Okay. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I am the senior editor over at Udon. So if you like really awesome video game art books and manga and anime art books and all sorts of cool stuff, check out our website. It's udonentertainment.com or udonstore.com, and we do like Mega Man art books and Persona art books, Street Fighter art books, basically all the coolest, characters and series. There's an art book for it, and we probably localized it. So there's that, and then I'm also, of course, one of the core Game Explain members, along with Andre and Derek. So you can find us at youtube.com/GameExplain, where we post all sorts of analyses and reviews, previews, and such on mostly Nintendo stuff, also some PlayStation stuff. We're trying to bring some other content into the fold, but our audience really, really loves Nintendo, so we mostly focus on that. And then, as you said, Chris, I am doing a Chrono Trigger live stream every week until I finish the game. It's not at a set time; it's either Saturday or Sunday, but I always tweet out the time beforehand. And on that note, you can find me on Twitter at Ash Paulsen, my name, which is ASHPAULSEN.
Yes, excellent, beautiful. Do it all. I'll have links to all that shit in the description.
Yeah.
Next time Ash has some free time, hopefully, another person asked a question about my thoughts on Mega Man X. And Ash, in addition to the biggest Chrono Trigger fan I know, he's also the biggest Mega Man X fan that I know. So.
Oh man, yeah, I could talk about X as a character for days. Like, oh man, yeah, that's gonna be fun.
Well, hopefully, because I've got some crazy shit happening for the rest of the year. But if you have time over this next month, hopefully we can maybe do that too, because that would be awesome. So,
yeah, I'm in.
Cool. All right. Well, that's gonna wrap us up, everybody. So, in the comments below, if you hopefully have had some kind of experience with Chrono Trigger, tell us your stories, memories, favorite characters, favorite moments, favorite music tracks, anything and all that you would like to bestow upon us. Let us know. If you've not played it, I hope that we have perhaps convinced you to give it a shot. Again, you can pick it up on the DS remake. It's probably not difficult to find on Amazon if you go looking for it. Highly recommended from both of us. Wonderful game, great stuff all around, and that's going to be it. And if you have other future Kirblog topics, etc. Leave a comment about that. I have a few more planned for the next week or so with some other guests and things, so we're back to doing more long ones again, but hopefully that's not too annoying for everybody. But that's it. So that's it for me. That's it for Ash. Thank you for joining me again, and we will catch you all later. Bye. 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 Bye.